I actually didn't choose all of the parts for our build today, but rather these are the specs that Blizzard recommends you play with for the new Diablo 4. So we're gonna find out in today's video if that was a mistake or not. Either way though, this super budget gaming PC turned out amazing in terms of both aesthetics and price to performance, and I'm gonna show you exactly how you can buy and build this for yourself so you can enjoy Diablo 4 and literally every other game with it in 1080p. Today's video is sponsored by GVG Mall, and you probably already know that I've been using them for so long to activate Windows on a ton of my own builds. They're actually running a huge sale right now, which boosts my normal 18% discount up to 25% off if you use code ZTT18, and I'll have that linked at the top of the description. They not only have Windows keys, but also a ton of other stuff such as Office, and even game keys for platforms like Steam, Origin, and Uplay, and they even have console stuff too, like PSN and Xbox prepaid cards as well. Activating Windows is super simple and only takes like 3 minutes total, so activate Windows today and remove that nasty watermark, and don't forget to use ZTT18 for 25% off. Alright, so I'm sure you've already seen this plastered around the internet already, and honestly ESPN has been running a ton of commercials as well, but Diablo 4 launched just last week, and if you're one of the mega fans like me that purchased the $90 or $100 version, we actually could start playing on Thursday of last week, which is exactly what I did. It was a very weird night on launch night because I actually wasn't even intending at all to play because I figured there would be a ton of server issues, maybe some crashes and whatnot, but it ended up being like one of the most smooth game launches of all time. I know, it's not like amazing news to hear that a game launched normally without any news headline worthy issues, but we just don't see this that often in the PC gaming world, unfortunately, so Diablo 4 is already off to a great start. I'll talk about my own thoughts on Diablo 4 and how we even have a ZTT community clan in just a bit, but for right now, let's take a look at this PC and those system requirements. These were actually posted over a month ago, which is why I was able to make this build right for launch week, and here's where we can see the different breakdown of specs that you'll need according to Blizzard. They have a minimum requirements PC first, and at the bottom, it even shows that this is for a 1080p native resolution with low settings at 30 FPS. I really like that more and more game companies are including the resolution, settings, and FPS targets with these spec sheets. They're actually starting to become useful, unlike in the past. This one says that you just need an Intel i5 2500K, 8GB of RAM, and a GTX 660. We're obviously going to build a system a bit beefier than that. Moving up to the medium or recommended requirements, this is for 1080p resolution with medium settings at 60 FPS, but honestly, this still isn't where we want to be. This recommends just an Intel i5 4670K, 16GB of RAM, and a GTX 970 or RX 470. It's great to see that you'll be able to get 1080p 60 FPS supposedly with this cheap of hardware. Diablo 4 isn't a graphically demanding game regardless though. Now next up we have the high requirements, and this is where I thought it would be best to target our build today. This will apparently get us 60 FPS in 1080p with high settings, but we'll run our own tests in just a second. Here it recommends an i7 8700K or a Ryzen 7 2700X, and that's exactly why I went with the 2700X for today's build. I snagged this off Jawa for $65, and shout out to the dude that sold it to me because he instantly messaged me after I bought it saying that he was a big fan of ZTT. Honestly, the 8700K probably would have given us better FPS numbers because it's a really fast gaming CPU, but with a low budget, I'll tend to stick to Ryzen versus an 8th gen Intel setup because there's nowhere for you to realistically upgrade from an 8700K, but you have plenty of options for upgrading with a Ryzen setup. Next up, back to the system requirements, it says we just need 16GB of RAM. So here I got the T-Force Vulcan Z 2x8GB 3600 MHz kit, and I bought this brand new off Amazon for just 37 bucks. I wanted the red stick specifically because of our Diablo color scheme, obviously, but RAM prices are just so good right now that you have so many options to choose from, so just get whatever you want here. For storage, it says we need 90GB of available space, and that makes sense because our initial download of the game was 84GB, which is high for this type of game, but still, it's nice to see that the spec sheet was actually accurate here. And finally, for the graphics card, Blizzard is recommending an RTX 2060 or an RX 5700 XT, and if you watched my recent best GPUs under $200 video, then you'll already know which option I'm gonna choose. I got a beautiful Sapphire Pulse 5700 XT that fits our color scheme absolutely perfectly. But yeah, in that video, I fully compared the RX 5700 XT, which you can normally find for around 150 bucks, against an RTX 2060 Super. Blizzard only recommends a 2060 non-super, by the way, but this 5700 XT is much better value either way. The RTX 2060 is still a solid card, and it's averaging a sold price of around $159 on eBay right now, but the 5700 XT will deliver much better FPS numbers, so that's why I chose that one. And honestly, because of the price to performance of the 5700 XT, it's actually really impressive to see this old of a card, but still viable of enough card, and this really only appeals to us PC flippers, so for Blizzard to put that on their spec sheet, it's actually pretty impressive. This system requirements page is actually full of useful information. And just to finish it off, here's what they're recommending for 4K ultra settings at 60 FPS. You'll need somewhere around an RTX 3080 or a 6800 XT to achieve that, but that's not the level of build that we're building today, so let's move on. For the rest of the parts inside the build, pairing with the 2700X, we have the Gigabyte B450M DS3H Wi-Fi motherboard. I've said this before, but this is one of the best brand new AM4 options that you can get right now very easily. It's always sitting on Newegg for $80 to $85, and with the built-in Wi-Fi, you just can't go wrong here. Next up, we have the SSD, and I just got the Team MP33 512GB NVMe drive again for 26 bucks. These were actually on sale last week for 22 bucks, so a ton of the ZTT community, including myself, bought a ton of them. This is a great example of why you should be following the ZTT Deals channel on our Discord server. I'll have that link down below. And also feel free to upgrade this to the 1TB model for just a few bucks more. That was also on sale for $36, which is a really great price. Moving along here though, next up we have the power supply, and here's another Thermaltake BM2 550 watt that I got for $45 off Newegg. The RX 5700 XT requires on paper a minimum of 600 watts, but with a solid unit like this, we're definitely not gonna have any issues. And next up we get to the case, and if you're a regular PC flipper or if you're just really in tune with the market, you'll already know all about this thing. This is the DIY PC ARGB Q3, and it's completely dominating the budget building scene right now. I recently just checked this out for the first time in last week's video where I secretly reviewed a Jawa build undercover. That's linked in the upper right hand corner, and even on our next Flippin' Friday episode, it's featuring this case as well. If you take a look on places like Jawa, then you'll see that a ton of builders are already using it, and it's just so solid for the money. For just 60 bucks, you're getting this micro ATX Lian Li 011 knockoff style of design, and it comes with 3 pre-installed RGB fans. There's plenty of room to add some water cooling at the bottom or even just some more fans, but instead of all that, I decided of course to throw in a Diablo Funko Pop for the occasion today. This is easily the worst price to performance part in the entire build, as I had to pay $37 for this thing, but most of them were actually priced between $40 and $50. When we sell this build on our upcoming July 1st drop, we will be selling it with the Funko Pop, just so you know, don't worry. We actually sell all of the PCs that we make a video on during the first of every month on zttbuilds.com, and just as a reminder, we do always have our restock builds available every day of the week, and we literally just upgraded the performance parts in those models without raising the prices at all. They're rocking some serious price to performance and aesthetics, so check those out if you want a fully put together system that's ready to game right now. But going back to this build, the only other part that we have in here are some Asia Horse Reg cable extensions, and I snagged these up for $23 off Amazon. Here's what the entire parts list is looking like, and if you don't count the super overpriced Diablo dude, this build costs less than $500, and a build like this would be very easy to repeat here in 2023. But now before we get into seeing if that system requirements page was accurate or not, and just our normal benchmarking and testing, I do want to highlight that we did have a slight issue with this build that we had to work through. Sam initially reported that he was getting a ton of blue screen of death issues with this PC whenever he enabled XMP, so of course we just did all the normal troubleshooting and we were swapping out parts like the motherboard, the CPU, and the RAM and whatnot, and it ended up being just a bad XMP profile. He ended up having to manually overclock and tune the RAM timings himself, and he did end up getting up to around 3200 megahertz, which is perfectly fine, but not the full 3600 megahertz that the RAM kit was listed at. Regardless though, we're finally jumping into some Diablo 4 in this build, and if you didn't already know, I'm actually personally a huge fan of not just the Diablo franchise, but these isometric ARPG style of games big time. I love Diablo 3, Grim Dawn, Torchlight, and even a bit of Path of Exile. So if you're interested in these style of games, I'd highly recommend you check out Diablo 4 as well. On the early release launch night, there were actually over 1 million viewers watching this game on Twitch, and for me, it's just extremely fun playing a game that I know a ton of other people are enjoying right now as well. We also have a ZTT clan in the game called Aesthetics, so feel free to just search for that and apply. I'll invite you in there so you can join us. If you don't get invited right away, feel free to just send me a DM on Discord to remind me. In terms of performance, honestly, this showcases a bit of inaccuracy to Blizzard's system requirements because we got way better results than they listed. I didn't adjust any of the manual settings other than just turning VSync off, and with using the built-in high preset, I got 143 FPS, and even the 1% low was 98. Again, the specs we're using were listed to achieve 60 FPS in 1080p and high, and we got over double that, which is great to see. Now, remember, the graphics of Diablo 4 aren't anything to write home about. It looks great, don't get me wrong, but this type of game certainly isn't pushing the limits hardware-wise. Now, I guess that you'd be able to play Diablo 4 on a potato, to be honest, and we're only gonna see more and more optimizations when it comes to the game and the driver as time goes on. For all the other games that you may be interested in playing with a budget gaming PC like this, let's test those out as well. Starting with Apex Legends, we were able to put the settings at 1080p and high, and we got an extremely impressive 189 average FPS. Next up was GTA 5, which puts more of the 2700X to the test, and it certainly didn't disappoint as we got 96 FPS using 1080p and very high settings. After that, we tested Fortnite just to make sure I'm still getting my money's worth out of that $150 Logitech mouse that I bought for Sam, and here, while he's hopefully landing some headshots, we got 184 FPS using 1080p and pro settings. And finally, we of course tested some 3D Mark Time Spy, and we got a score of 9,743, which honestly sounds higher than it should be, but this 2700X and 5700 XT is just a really good combo that most people aren't taking advantage of. For reference, the 5700 XT actually beats the RTX 3060 in several different titles, so it's definitely still up there in terms of performance with the newer GPUs. And for some more numbers, here are the other games that we tested. We used either high, very high, or ultra settings for all of these games, and we got very playable numbers for every game we tested, including the harder to run games like Hogwarts Legacy. And for the 5 to 10 of you that ask in every single video, yes, we did include the easier to run titles as well. A build like this can obviously smash games like Minecraft, Valorant, and Rainbow Six Siege in 1080p with max settings. But yeah, hopefully you're all enjoying Diablo 4 as much as I am. And again, I'd love to have you in our aesthetics clan so we can all team up and slay some demons. Feel free to comment down below how hard you've been going in. We're gonna have to fix it. Feel free to comment down below how hard you've been going in Diablo 4 so far by the time you're watching this video. I want to see what class and level everyone is getting up to see if I'm slouching or not. And if you want to see another build that's around this similar price point that will play Diablo 4 just as well, then feel free to click the video that's on the screen now.